Talk This.
It's dangerous to podcast alone.
I'm your host who definitely thought through all the ramifications of this side quest when I picked it, Madelyn.
I'm your other host, Emma.
And thanks for tuning in for this side quest episode of Talk This. It's my turn to choose.
It sure is.
As you might have guessed from that opening bio. And I chose the very not at all loaded and heavy and complicated topic of the intersections of video games and political campaigns.
Indeed. It's not at all complicated. At all.
You can't even escape that here on your Talk This. You tuned in thinking, an hour where I don't have to think about political campaigns.
I'll just make dumb puns and mess up the game titles, mispronounce things. But no. I mean, we'll still probably do all that. To be honest,
we'll still probably do all that. But you just get a side of politics and squirminess.
Yes.
With that. So it was my turn to choose our side quest topic, and I picked this for better or for worse. Because, of course, one of the big stories this week was AOC and Ilhan Omar playing Among Us.
Yeah.
On a big old Twitch stream that a lot of people watched.
Yeah.
And, of course, I've also been chuckling at the Biden campaign's various attempts to woo us all via Animal Crossing.
Yes.
With they released all their custom designs for, yard signs. I was about to say a few weeks ago, but who freaking knows, really? At some point in the past several months. But definitely within the past few weeks, the Joe Biden Dream Island has opened up.
Yes.
Which, imagine trying to explain that to Joe.
Yeah, I wonder how much he knows about it, or if they just, put a briefing on his desk being like, we're gonna make this, and he was like, sure.
That is a question that I have, too. Obviously, whatever, I'll dive into this more later, but obviously he did not make the island.
Well,
and
yes.
Had no
I
part
would be
in
concerned.
Making the island.
I'd be concerned if anyone was making, as elaborate an island as that, if they're in an active political campaign,
Fair. But, does he know anything about it? Has he looked at it? Did he have to approve it?
Yeah, did he have to approve it? How did that go? What was that meeting like?
A lot of questions there. And so both of these things made me think about, obviously one of the most infamous examples of campaigns and games intersecting is from the 2016 campaign and the infamous meme of Pokemon Go to the polls.
Yes.
Which, you know what? Let me just say, does that sound like a joke that I would make to open the podcast? Just absolutely yes. So I have deep sympathy. I have a lot of sympathy for Hillary and how that was taken.
Yeah, it very much, though, became just emblematic of the lack of understanding that her campaign had of young voters, I guess.
Yes. It was prefaced by, I don't know who made Pokemon Go, but I want them to make It's like, you don't know who made Pokemon Go?
Really?
You really? Google it.
Yeah.
Takes 5 seconds.
Yeah.
Niantic probably would make a Pokemon Go to the polls.
I mean, the thing is, whatever, you don't know it was Niantic, but really, you don't know where Pokemon comes from?
Yeah.
It's a little sus.
Anyway, all of these things together got me thinking about how, for the most part, when you see politics and games intersect, and it's not the, eye-rolling, blaming mass shootings on video games discourse that we've talked about on the show before, and we don't need to rehash for this episode.
Yes.
But usually it feels awkward and out of touch, and it's more underlining how much these people definitely don't know anything about video games, and they're attempting to be relatable, than necessarily succeeding in being relatable. Whereas, and there's a lot to talk about the AOC stream of Among Us, but certainly way more than Joe's Animal Crossing Island or any other intersection of politics and games in this kind of campaign-oriented way, it seems to have come across as much more authentic.
Yeah.
And so it got me thinking about, how could games and politics actually intersect in a way that doesn't just make me want to roll my eyes, basically.
Yeah. I do think, like, it's worth noting that I don't think AOC has streamed herself before, but she has certainly called in to people's charity streams, like other, I guess, leftist YouTubers. I think, like, H-Bomber Guy, for instance, was doing a charity stream that she called into last year, 2 years ago or something. So she does seem to have had a previous understanding of how to reach people through this as well. It's not like a sudden new arena for her in particular, I guess.
Absolutely, and she's gotten plenty of hate from the right about the time that she spends playing video games. I mean, there's nothing that she can do that doesn't get hate from some direction. Yes. But she's also been open about being a League of Legends player. So even though it seems like she hadn't played Among Us before, which, you know what, fine, who has 8 friends?
Yeah.
But, like, she at least appeared on the stream as someone who wasn't like, ooh, wow, a video game.
Yeah.
And was more asking questions, and despite maybe not being great at Among Us.
I mean, to be fair, you're not great at Among Us the first time you play it.
Yeah.
Nobody is.
But at least it didn't appear as someone who's, like, never picked up a game controller before.
Yes. Yeah.
Which is a low bar to clear, but, like, that's the bar.
Yep. Yeah, that pretty much is the bar in terms of government right now.
So there's a lot to chew over here, and plenty of articles have done some of the chewing already on the kind of parasocial streamer relationship and the parasocial relationship that AOC is building with her fandom, and the fact that she even has a fandom as a politician. But I'll get the good stuff out of the way first, right? Like, obviously, this is an interesting way to connect with a younger audience.
Yes.
And even though I have a lot of mixed feelings that I'll get into later, I'm sure, about her big political message from this being, like, vote. Right? Like,
right.
Geez, speaking of low bars.
Yeah.
Like, geez, like, that's what you're gonna broadcast to the, like, million people who are watching all the versions of the stream, like, vote. But on the other hand, in theory, like, young people don't vote, and maybe that'll change this. I mean, goodness knows, if it doesn't change this election, it's never gonna change.
Yeah.
Without real electoral reform, ayo. But anyway, but, like, theoretically, this makes sense as a platform for that message. And it's exciting that there are even a handful of politicians who are literate enough in games to try to reach those younger constituents where they are.
Yeah, I mean, it's not even just, like, being able to play games, it's just being able to recognize where who people are watching to get information. Right? Like, there are all these late shows, and, like, I guess youngish people watch late shows. I'll check into them every once in a while. But most young people are getting, like, politics information and entertainment from Twitch and YouTube. And so in this stream, you have a lot of Twitch and YouTube personalities, too, that are bringing in their fan base, and you are touching into that more than you necessarily are just, like, showing off your gaming skills, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mostly mean, if you put Joe Biden into a game of Among Us, he would embarrass himself. Maybe. I don't know. You know what? I don't know what Joe does during his free time. But maybe he does. Maybe he's a big Among Us fan and he just doesn't think it's right for the brand.
Maybe.
But, like, there does need to be a baseline level of competence here of... like one of the other gamer representatives, Josh Harder of California, who is also a big League of Legends player, apparently. They're coming out of the woodwork of Congress. I was reading an article where he was quoted talking about how, like, the biggest problem for reaching young voters isn't, like, necessarily, like, for the most part, these Democratic representatives, like, they know that these people many of them anyway, probably would vote for them. It's getting them to vote and getting them to care enough to know that in the first place.
Right.
So you have to get past that, like, cynicism level, and you don't get past that cynicism level on a video game stream, especially as a woman, probably, if you don't display some kind of baseline level of knowledge and competence.
That's true, yeah.
Although, you know what? What I will say, not that streaming was nearly as big, you know, during the Obama campaign years in the same way as it is now, but if you put the Vice President, Joe Biden, in a stream and he had done a bad job, we all would have thought that was pretty funny.
Yeah.
And, like, charming in, like, 2013.
Yeah.
We'd have been like, oh, Joe, you don't know how to play Halo.
Obama was the first presidential candidate to buy in-game ads, which shows, like, some level of understanding of, like, where it should be going, but not too much understanding of, like, how to use that, right? Like, I'm not looking at the in-game ads in NBA 2016 or whatever, you know?
Well, that's continuing, though. LeBron has made some PSAs that are in the latest NBA 2K that are about voter suppression, basically, that display on the loading screens. Which, to be fair, I look at my phone during loading screens, so...
Yeah,
nice,
I mean, that's
nice
a little
attempt.
different, too, though, because it's LeBron. It's not, like, a hope poster, you know?
Fair enough. That's fair. Obama at least plays basketball, right? So maybe that's enough.
It was in Burnout Paradise, too.
Obama at least crashes cars, so that's good enough. He also hosted an esports tournament to promote Obamacare.
Did he really? I don't remember
I didn't read enough about it to, like, have too many details, but yes.
Interesting.
Which is just, like, that's an interesting idea, but I don't really get the connection there. Did everybody have to play as the healer?
That would be a funny gimmick. Sure.
You know what? It would get the press, right? Like, it would get some press. And maybe it would reach the right people for being, like, just the right level of dumb. But anyway, so obviously, like, I understand why she did this, and, like, to her credit, like, AOC at least is pretty good at convincing me she seems pretty authentic.
Yeah.
Right? And she does seem interested in engaging with her constituents in a way that many politicians do not seem interested in doing.
Yeah.
So all of this is to her credit, and when I start to pick apart this stunt a little bit more, it's coming from a place of cynicism in the system. And I'm, of course, hopeful that there are people who are not cynical and whatever. I don't ascribe any ill will to her. Well, I don't know. I don't know how much manipulativeness to ascribe to any politician who seems good, basically.
Sure. I mean, I think there's definitely a lot of warning to letting yourself form a fandom around a politician. Or really kind of around any real person, to be honest. Although we've been doing that with celebrities for ever. So it's not like that's going away. But when they are politicians, it becomes a little bit more problematic, right? Like, the idea is not necessarily the person, but the policies, right? Or you want it to be that.
At least in our current system, where you can't trust anyone. I mean, of course, it's also not like you want to vote for someone just because they're cool.
Yeah.
But that's all, that's also always been part of politics, right? Yeah. Like, people doing their kissing babies thing has always...
Yeah, that's true.
So, what is sort of more, perhaps, again, I say insidious, I don't mean to ascribe that as a motivation to either of the women who did this stream, but just the relationship that streamers have with their viewers, and as that becomes potentially a more common way for at least some politicians to engage with their... I almost said fans, right? And that's the bad thing, right? But to engage with their constituents or engage with their followings, is that like, that's a very unique relationship, and it's a weird relationship that makes you feel like you know someone better than you do.
Yes.
And that's a lot of power. And it's already a lot of power for a lot of people of questionable morality.
Sure, yeah.
And it's probably only going to become something that's, like, that kind of, like, fake closeness with celebrities. Unless we all do finally say social media is bad and drop it, it's probably only going to become something that's more and more common and more used until everybody gets really cynical about it. Which they already are, but until everybody gets cynical enough to not buy into it at all.
Yeah. But I mean, like that's there, right? Like, people who stream, you know, some streamers have no political talk or whatever, but they have their own opinions, and they impart those to their chats. So in that way, like, doesn't really make a difference to me if you're a political streamer versus a politician, I guess. Because really, where's the line necessarily? Just that somebody ran for office versus somebody exerting their political power through the interwebs, you know?
Yeah. Theoretically, the politicians have more direct power. The problem is just that not very many of them, or any of them, are savvy enough to really manipulate streams at this point. So they don't wield an undue influence on those platforms, but I think that's a yet thing, and not a permanent thing.
I mean, again, though, like, to me, that's just not, there's not a huge functional difference between people who are elected streaming and people who aren't elected streaming. It's the same thing.
I guess it's just coming from the place of I'm ascribing more, and this is wrong, because of course everyone is playing a role on a stream in some way, but I'm ascribing a more manipulative tactic to the politicians than I am to at least most streamers. But maybe that's...
Sure, I mean, just to throw us into the deep water, I guess. Like, the people who are on the alt-right were not primed into a fervor by politicians, right? That happened through people who, at the time at least, were not politicians, but espoused strong political opinions on videos and podcasts and other visible things. You know, that set the stage for a lot of stuff to happen that's happening now, and it had almost nothing to do with anyone who was elected office until 2016.
But see, that's what I'm worried about. That's what I'm curious about. Is, could there ever be a politician who has an authentic following on something like Twitch, and is able to, like, really weaponize that? Or are we just so distrustful of all politicians that, like, the streamers are going to do the political work, and, like, the people that are going to prime voters for good or ill? Is there enough, like... And someone like AOC, I feel like, is, like, kind of walking this line, right? Of, like, she's kind of a cultural figure that people feel like they are fans of. And do we feel like that's going to just invade more and more politics as these kinds of platforms?
I mean, I guess it's just, the thing is, it's like, it just cuts out the middleman, right? There are tons of politicians that are willing to take advantage of the fandoms that non-politicians have created for them. So, in that way, I don't think there would be much functional difference if there was a politician streaming. Just because it wouldn't do anything different, it would just cut out the middleman there.
Well, except that I think that it will reach a different, broader audience. Like, a lot of people are on Twitter, for instance.
A broader audience? I mean, I guess, but, I mean, most politicians are only their state would be interested, you know? I don't know.
I guess that's true, but not if you have ambitions beyond... Like, if you have presidential ambitions, or you have...
Okay, I personally don't think you get much broader than, like, PewDiePie.
you know what, I'm sorry, I wasn't totally clear. I meant, like, that, I guess that's true. You're right. You're not going to be able to fight with, like, the truly, like, giant streamers, unless that's where you start. I mean, I'm very worried about PewDiePie thinking that one day he should run for Congress.
That's true.
So that's what's interesting to me, is, like, is this where politicians are going to come from, or is this where you build your following before you go to office, and what does that mean?
Well, I do know, like, Brianna Wu, who was one of the victims of Gamergate, did run for Congress in 2018 and lost, and then withdrew her campaign this year because of COVID, basically. So, I mean, there's certainly a lot of young people who are more, at least technologically savvy in the current technology. We'll see when they become old fogies, how long that takes. But I think it's pretty much inevitable that, I mean, well, that's optimistic, actually. When will we ever see any turnover ever again? That's the real question. So, come back to us in 20 years when old Mitch is finally, descended.
Just step down the staircase to hell.
Yep.
And wave farewell. He's got a date with the devil. No, I guess it just feels like, to me, I worry what happens when... What I'm thinking about is, okay, so we have a president right now who clearly loves Twitter, right?
Sure.
He loves Twitter. He is not good at using it, right? Like, or does not have enough brain cells. I don't believe the, like, 6th level, like, manipulation. Like, he's not smart enough for that.
Sure, but I don't necessarily think him not being smart doesn't mean that he's not fine at using Twitter. Twitter runs on manufactured outrage.
Okay, I guess that's fair. But I do feel that he does not have a strategy in using Twitter.
Okay, that's fair.
That while certainly you're absolutely right that the way that he uses Twitter does in many ways fuel his reach, that to some extent the president is going to could have a large reach on Twitter. It could make people pay attention to him on Twitter if he wanted to, right? And Trump has now trained us that we have to pay attention to him on Twitter for worse. I was going to say for better or for worse, but, like, for worse. But I'm thinking, okay, what happens when you get a Trump-like figure, and maybe it's an oxymoron to call this kind of person a Trump-like figure, but bear with me. What happens when you get a Trump-like political figure who actually has a couple of brain cells to put together to use Twitter and Twitch and YouTube in a way that is actually has a strategy behind it?
I mean, I think in some ways, like, their strategy right now is they're much better at using the middlemen than the left is.
Yes.
The left ignores their middlemen, basically, on the whole. Or the left, the DNC ignores their middlemen. The conservatives, they may, like, publicly be like, oh, no, sometimes, but that they're willing to use their middlemen for their own gain, and understand how to do it as well.
Well, that's what freaks me out a little bit about Twitch and streaming and video games starting to get noticed as a potential platform for direct political engagement. Because, of course, like you said, the alt-right middlemen have already completely taken over Facebook and completely taken over YouTube, and I don't engage as much with streaming, but, like, in many ways, they've already got their fingers deep in streaming. At least in certain personalities.
Yeah.
And on the left, meanwhile, most of our connection with games is, like, lip service jokes from senior citizens who have never played a video... That's probably not true. Who have never played the games they are joking about, at least. And then, like, yes, maybe some authentic use from, like, some young leftists. But like I said, the message of AOC's, like, giant, record-breaking stream was just like to go vote. Meanwhile, our alt-right middlemen, the message of their streams is like Bill and Hillary are eating children.
Yeah.
And like they've convinced a ton of suburban white women that like Tom Hanks is eating children. Oprah is eating children.
Yeah, when you put it in the Tom Hanks and Oprah terms, it really shows what an accomplishment it is.
Right? It's like, yeah, it's one thing to have convinced people like about Bill and Hillary, because people believe anything about them.
Yep.
Right? If Joe Biden had said that Pokemon Go to the polls thing, everyone would have been like, ah, ha, Joe, as opposed to, like, what an idiot. They would have, right? Like, there's a unique hatred there. Some of it deserved. I'm not gonna dig into that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like when you have a machine that is good enough that it can convince like white moms of that kind of wildness, and on the other side we're using it to like say go vote. It's just like, how do you even and you know, one other thing of course that was good maybe about the AOC stream is like she's a woman she's a woman of color. She calls herself a socialist, right?
Yeah. And
yeah, maybe there's some benefit to seeing, like, she's normal. She plays the games that you play or that your kids play and you don't understand. And, like, she seems relatively, like, not a monster, right? I don't totally discount that, but it's still pretty much, like, the lightest political message you can get, which is this woman who won her election in a landslide is not a monster, and she wants you to vote. Which, to be fair, I was talking about this with my boyfriend, and he was like, well, you know, like, telling people to vote is not exactly as bipartisan as, like, it maybe used to be. Or at least we don't get to, you know. But still, at least on the face of it, the Republican Party is not going to come out and be like, yes, voter suppression, even though they pretty much have in all ways except saying it.
Yeah.
And some of them have said it. But, you know, it's just like, how does that even stack up? Like, can't we at least push for something about voter suppression? Like, can't we go, like, half a step deeper?
Yeah. I mean, I think I sort of understand the idea of this sort of weird... I don't know, maybe it was like this before too, but there's this sort of weird, like, extreme, like, vote thing happening everywhere right now. But, like, I understand the point, right? Like, from the Democratic side, just with the way voting suppression is right now, like, they want everybody who can vote to vote so that there is ideally no question for this election. And it's not like, even if everybody got all their stuff together and worked on it now, there's nothing they could do before the election to fix some of the issues of voting, let alone all of them. So I sort of understand the idea of it, of just trying to generalize it for the election and, you know, get Trump out of there as cleanly as possible. But it's also, it does become a little bit like, you know, like, I know the young people don't vote, but also, like, a lot of it is just people who can't go vote, right? And that's the real issue, of course. And also, like, I was reading an article, and it is a little weird, like, when celebrities aren't just telling me, like, how they're gonna vote, but, like, how their characters would vote, you know? Like, here's what my fictional character would say to do. Like, Frank from The Sopranos would definitely vote for Biden, which doesn't even make sense.
I feel like it's one thing maybe when you have played, like, I get the West Wing cast feeling like they can be like, here's what my character would do.
Sure.
But, yeah, Frank from The Sopranos feels like not... Like, I don't want anyone to tell me how Mario would vote.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's not quite the right comparison, but...
Mario to the polls.
No. Madeline, they're all gone. We lost all of them.
Mario, this isn't your precinct. Your ballot is in another building. But no, I just think it's a waste. I think it's a waste. Who doesn't know? Maybe this comes from a place of privilege, but, like, all of the social media networks are, like, screaming at you to vote. At all times. It irritates me. I understand the idea of it, but, like, it's deeply irritating. And anyone who is keyed in enough to watch a Twitch stream, like, I just can't, like, doesn't need that message. Maybe they do. I don't know. Again, young people don't vote, and this surprises me every year. And it really does feel like it has to be a voter suppression thing, or like, early voting just started in New York City. I walked by my polling place today. The line wrapped around the block, and then around another block to go around that block again. Like, in New York City.
Yeah.
Where, like, I'm not at all worried about voter suppression here.
Yeah.
But I still, if I had wanted to vote today, would have had to have waited in what looked to be, like, if it had been moving fast, that line would have been a 2-hour line, and it did not look like it was moving fast.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I've been thinking about, and I don't have any good answers, but I've been thinking about how, like, is the games community just too toxic and too primed with alt-right stuff and too screamy in chat to ever go stronger than that in, like, a streaming space?
I mean, there's leftist political streamers and YouTubers.
I know, but no, like you said, nobody who's gonna match up to PewDiePie's, like, casual Nazism that he won't admit.
Mm-hmm.
And apparently, you know what? Maybe we just need to get the person who built Joe Biden's island on the scene.
They can fix it all.
I'll pull it back. I'll pull it back for a little bit of a lighter tour of Joe's island for a minute so we can all catch our breaths. It's way more detailed than it needs to be. Have you read about Joe Biden's Animal Crossing island?
I saw there's, like, a White House in the background, which, like...
Yeah, there's, like, they built some kind of perspective thing where you can see the White House.
It's very... I don't understand how that works, even.
Me either. Full campaign office, Joe Biden running around saying no malarkey. The touch.
Yeah, how did that work? Like, do you give your, like, do you appear in your dream island? You must be able to tell it,
like, I think in your dream island you can, like, set a thing that you say.
Oh, okay.
The thing that I love is the villagers.
Yeah.
Because he has a ton of dogs, because Joe Biden loves dogs.
Right.
So, nice. He has an eagle.
Right.
America. And he has Raymond.
That poor intern who had to keep resetting the clock and, you know, going on Nook Island tours to get Raymond.
That's the thing, though, that's, like, that's the authentic gamer pandering that I want. Because you're right. Like, he should have Raymond on his... Like, Raymond is beloved. Like, that's right. And whoever played the game actually knows something about Animal Crossing and thought, yes, Raymond.
We need to have Raymond.
Imagine explaining that one.
It's like, why is the island late to get in? It's like, gotta get Raymond. We're trying, Joe.
Is it privileged of me to say, though, that I don't want politics in my Animal Crossing?
I mean, I don't know. I don't know if privileged is the right word for it. Is it privileged that you have Animal Crossing?
I mean, okay, of course. Putting aside the privilege of I own a Switch and can buy Animal Crossing, right?
Yeah.
Is it privileged for me to be like, I don't actually appreciate campaigning in this game that a ton of people have and can reach a bunch of people?
I mean, I can't imagine, like, me putting down, like, a campaign poster for anybody. Right? Not just for Biden. Like, not just specifically for Biden. Like, for anybody in my Animal Crossing world, because I would walk past it and go, gah! Every single time, of being like, it does feel wrong a little bit for there to be politics in Animal Crossing when, you know, Tom Nook is there as the benevolent dictator. And that's all you really need.
But see, here's the thing. Here's what I don't like about all the fake Animal Crossing posturing that happens, is there are so many way more interesting socialist stuff you could do, like, as someone visiting people's Animal Crossing islands. Like, AOC did this. AOC, like, visited people's islands, and she brought her, like, fruit with her. Like, good for her. But, like, I really feel like on Joe Biden's island, he should, like, throw money at you. He should be like, tax breaks, healthcare. Like, he should have medicine everywhere that you can take. And, like I think there's a
nice
real...
if it was his policies, you know.
I know it's not his policy, but AOC at least should have that and should do... I hope she's listening to the show. Your next thing really should be that you should make an island and it just has medicine everywhere that you can take, and it has bells that you can take, and, like, turnips.
Yeah.
And it's, like, all just there for you, and you get to drop things too. You can't do that, but
Creative
you
idea.
sort of can.
Creative idea.
I think so. I think you get way more fun political stuff going on in Animal Crossing than just campaign signs.
Yeah.
Put your bells where your mouth is. Pay off my home loan, Joe. Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me that wouldn't be like a...
No,
like,
I think that's a great idea.
To be way more effective and way more engaged with, like, what the game is.
Gotta get you as a strategist, you know?
They should be bringing me in as a game strategist. You're absolutely right.
Madelyn, the Twitch expert.
On Fall Guys, Joe Biden bites the grabbers. Look, politics is all about making memes now, so you might as well do a good job, but you might as well lean in.
Sure.
Right? If that's what it takes to get elected and then hopefully do some good, yeah, be as sus as you want.
But we're really just, on the DNC side, we're really just at the starting stages of them starting to feel out, like, what games are, what they can do with them, what people are doing with them, what people are saying about them. And in the meantime, I think it's fair to say that, at least in the overall, I would call gaming a overall conservative community. Right? Like, my Twitter timeline is full of people who play games and are liberal. But, you know, the average, a lot of gamers are playing the latest Call of Duty where freaky zombie ghost Reagan thing, Uncanny Valley Reagan, is telling you to go do some war crimes. Or Ubisoft is like, this raised fist that they're bad. You gotta go undercover and do some war crimes. They're not Black Lives Matter, but they're using that.
It's a mess. It's just a mess.
Yeah. And just because, it's because nobody took Gamergate very seriously, and every corporation was like, oh no, customer loss, and shifted towards that, I think is fair to say.
I don't want to believe, I just don't want to believe that actually the majority of gamers are conservative. I do believe that the majority loudest gamers are conservative. But given that gaming is predominantly a, millennials and down pastime.
I mean, I don't want to say that the majority of games and gamers are alt-right. I just think that they're conservative,
I guess, except that theoretically young people are not conservative, right?
I guess.
God, please, right? Theoretically, the young people that were trying to vote Wouldn't that be a nightmare if AOC's stream was just like a bunch of like alt-right horrors who were like, I wasn't gonna vote, but this Among Us stream made me think maybe I should vote.
I mean, that's not really how it works.
I know it's not how it works, but that's a horror show. But yeah, I just, like, I want to believe that this, like, hobby that is shared by, like, majority young people, because clearly the old people in Congress don't know what games are. Which is in itself alarming, right? Like, not that I expect representatives to all be playing games, like, not everybody plays games, whatever, but especially given how much Gamergate shaped the political landscape as it is, but also just because, like, I think about, obviously, Joe Biden not knowing what Animal Crossing is, right? And that's, like, a little weird. Animal Crossing was huge at the beginning of the pandemic, among everyone.
I mean, people, they don't know what Facebook is, still, right? Like, they had Mark Zuckerberg, extraordinaire, go in front of Congress, however long ago that was, like a year or a couple of years, and most of the time he was just explaining what Facebook was to them. And, like, how on earth are you supposed to think about privacy issues if you don't even understand what Facebook is, you know?
And it's astonishing that we tolerate that. I realize being culturally literate isn't the most 100% necessary quality in a politician, but why do we tolerate these people that don't know anything about the things that their constituents do that have been invented in the past 20 years?
I don't know, man. Same
you
reasons.
To have an answer.
I mean, a very, gradual sort of setting up the country to be easy for that to pass through,
I guess so. But what do you think George Washington would have thought about video games?
Oh my god. I personally think we perhaps reached a stage in history where trying to suss out the founders' intentions about certain things is maybe not the most, productive use of time.
Wow, are you saying you don't love the founders? That's pretty sus of you.
Like, I don't know what they would say about Facebook. Like, who cares? Kind of.
Just imagine trying to explain Twitch to John Adams.
I can't imagine it.
Do you think it would be easier to explain Twitch or to explain Facebook?
Probably Twitch.
That's what I was thinking. I was like, you know what? Like, it's a performance, but they're not there.
Yeah.
They're, like, reading you a really crazy book.
Yeah. Yeah, because I feel like you could use the reference of, like, going to the theater and just being like, you're at the theater, but at your house.
It's your home.
And it's like you're seeing I guess you're going to see a speaker. You're going to see someone speak. That's how you explain Twitch.
Yeah. Also, they hate everyone.
Exactly.
Oh, man. Is there any light at the end of the tunnel, Emma? Can we reclaim games as a good space? Or is it too late?
I don't know. I mean, you there's a lot of, games and social media are very tied together, and the loudest voices on social media tend to be the most unpleasant ones, because that's just, how the algorithm works. Oh, I finally installed, like, an extension that lets me block YouTube channels so they don't show up in search results.
Oh, that's great.
So nice. Never have to see certain channels ever again. It's very good. But, like, you get stuff like The Last of Us 2, which, like, yeah, there's LGBT characters, but it's not exactly, like, a liberal
Groundbreaking.
bastion
Yeah.
sort of game. And you get people screaming about it, right? Like, and so, you know, I mean, I think the indie space is definitely a lot more liberal in general, at least the notable indie space. I think if you go towards, like, all the games and, like, the fact that, you know, Steam will leave up, you know, absolute
anything
trash. Like, there's the whole controversy of, like, the game that was just called, like, Rape Simulator.
Right.
Was on there for, like, a week before they did anything about it. It's just like, you know, maybe you should take that down, no? So I think that they're just, I mean, in games there needs to just be a greater understanding about, like, content moderation and reporting and, you know, companies caring that a variety of people feel welcome in their games versus just caring that they have a large enough base to, you know, sustain themselves.
Well, the problem is that people are not genuine in their critiques, or they are not honest about the arguments that they're making in critiquing games like The Last of Us 2.
Yeah.
I have to read one more tweet about Abby's protein intake. Like, we know that it's not about her protein intake.
I love the ones that are a super funny play on Neil Druckmann's name. Those are my favorite YouTube thumbnails.
Oh, man. I bet you he loves those.
I have my own issues with Neil Druckmann, but every time I see that, I'm like, oh, Neil. You're okay, buddy. You're fine.
It's not your fault.
Yeah.
Well, all of that from a fun little stream.
Yeah. I mean, I just think it's ultimately going to be a lot of walking stuff back that we've allowed to get this far, right? And ideally speed walking it back. That's my optimistic view of the future. Maybe we'll do some speed walking instead of, you know, crawling or something.
Never gonna happen unless the DNC gets better at memes. I don't mean that entirely. Like, it sounds a little facetious, and I am being a little facetious, but, like, I don't mean it entirely. Like, they should consider hiring the Fall Guys Twitter guy.
Yeah. It's fair.
I think if Oliver and AOC got together, that would be unstoppable. Tell me I'm wrong.
You're not wrong, I don't think. I think that you're good.
And, like, ultimately for worse, right? Like, I don't think memeing politics is actually really a good thing, but I don't think it's avoidable at this point, so
Yeah.
You gotta lean in.
Yeah. And, I think learning to take the internet seriously is also something that's going to be important. Because when Gamergate started, I was going to say was happening, but that implies that it is gone, which it's not. Like, nobody took that seriously, right? Like, and you get stories related to it of, like, people going to the police with, like, death threats and them just not being able to understand why those were serious if they were on Twitter, you know, or anything like that. And even just beyond, like, the way that people can threaten each other over the internet, like, just taking the fact that, you know, that's where people go. People who play games, that's where they go to talk and gather and form communities. And, you know, when Gamergate started, a lot of personalities saw that as an opportunity to go into those communities and recruit them, basically. So you just have to do that, accept, positively.
Maybe I'm overly pessimistic, but it's hard for me to believe that will ever... Like, I just believe that, like, any alt-right garbage will immediately be believed by millions of people, and, like, I don't know.
Sure, but I mean, a lot of it is, like, people are unhappy and they want something different, right? At the end of the day, that's a lot of what the core motivation of anyone who's recruitable is. And it's just that alt-right is much faster and better at being like, here's your alternative, than people on the left are right now.
I know, but how do you turn universal health care and universal basic income and I don't know, what else do I want? More taxes on the uber rich into a conspiracy theory?
You could definitely do something with that. The
I
government,
need someone to figure it out.
The government
like,
is
yesterday.
hoarding hordes of money from you when they could be giving it to you. $1,000 a month. They have a secret vault full of gold. They're just storing
vault.
That they're just storing for emergencies. For those in power. Demand that they give up the gold for the common people. See, I just did it.
There's something there. It's not salacious enough yet. I'm gonna be honest. Like, it needs to be something that people call Facebook to block, and they won't. So, think about it.
Okay, we'll refine it. We'll work on it. Watch our Twitter for the hashtag truth.
Oh boy, plugging the social media now feels a little gross, doesn't it?
A little bit.
Alright, listeners. Thanks for tuning in for this side quest episode of Talk This.
It's dangerous to podcast alone.
It's dangerous to podcast at all.
Yep.
Apparently. Or to listen to podcasts. So thanks for tuning in as we tried to indoctrinate you for the past 50 minutes or so. Listen, hey, are you still in the social media hellscape with us? If you're not, please don't do this. Like, don't come back for us.
Yeah.
It's not worth it. Wait for the subscribe to the show portion. You can look at the website, right? You'll get the information. But if you are still in the pit of despair that is Facebook.com or Twitter.com, or do you really talk about Instagram as Instagram.com? It's really an app.
There is a .com. It does exist.
I know it does, but it doesn't let you click on anything if you're not signed in.
That's like, someone would be like, on Instagram.com. That's a very Joe Biden thing to say, I think.
Kamala probably has an Instagram and, like, knows what it is, right?
I don't know.
Like,
I don't follow politicians on Instagram.
I don't either. She's probably seen video games, right?
I don't know.
I have to believe that Kamala has played a game, and, like, not that she's a gamer, but, like, she's young enough that she has to have, like, she has children, right? She has to have seen video games. Anyway, if you are still on Twitter.com or Facebook.com or YouTube.com or the Instagram app, you can follow us there. We're at Talk This Podcast on all of those apps and websites. So follow us there for good content that does not recruit you, except in believing in the power of gameplay as storytelling. And to hate Reen from Trails of Cold Steel.
I will turn you against Reen.
That is a political mountain that we will never stop climbing.
Reen eats children.
Tom Hanks is Reen. So join us there for our takes on stuff. You know what social media is. If you're not on social media, or you are and you just want a different place to engage with us, you should check out the website, www.talkthispodcast.com, where you can read all about the show, check out the games that are in the hat, read some dated bios of Emma and I, and check out our blog, where you can read long-running series Clickbait Boyfriend, with an edition on the Kingdom Hearts Melody of Memory demo that has some pretty good images, if I do say so myself. Looking forward to Emma seeing them in our WordPress media.
I did see a few, because the split screen went up yesterday, so I saw I saw a few highlights.
Excellent. So be excited for that, but also be excited for Split Screen, which Emma just mentioned, where we are watching Coffee Prince and My Hero Academia. Good stuff there. And, miscellaneous other blog content that you never want to miss. Next week, we're going to be talking about Romance of the Three Kingdoms and Fall Guys.
Good
So
job.
let's hope that Joe Biden fights the grabbers is the big headline this week. Surely, right?
I think that's a good idea.
I do too.
Go on there solely to fight the grabbers. That's a good catchy, punchy shtick.
I think so too. Somebody hire me. But finally, if you never want to miss my insightful political commentary and 90% correct pronunciation of game titles, you should subscribe to the show. We're on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, Spotify, Pandora Podcasts online and on the app, Overcast, Pocket Cast, probably the dark web. Anywhere you can find podcasts, you can find Talk This.
Yeah.
That's our show. Sorry to introduce some podcasts into your Talk This. Some podcasts.
I was gonna say, I don't know what that means, Valen.
Sorry to introduce some politics into the podcast. It's really what I meant to say.
Uh-huh.
But I thought about that giant line at my polling place again, and my brain just melted a little bit.
Well, in your apology, why don't you sign us off for now?
All right, listeners. I hope that this week that you're I don't even know. How do I even sign this off? I hope that this week that you have a good stream.
That you're not sus.
Yeah, there we go. That you're not at all sus. That nothing sus happens to you. That nothing sus happens in the world. That's what I hope for you this week. That sus is over. The sus times are not here again.